globally, are already feeling the effects of this.
As recently as the 1950s, the average cost of catastrophic events was a mere $3.9 billion per year. Since 1950, the cost of natural disasters worldwide has increased dramatically. Violent weather cost the world a record $89 billion in 1998, more than in all of the 1980s, per the World Watch Institute and Munich Re. In 2008, total disaster-related economic losses hit record $232 billion, continuing a long-term trend.
Have climate-related disasters increased? The answer is yes. Debarati Guhasapper, director of the Center for Research on the Epidemiology of Disasters, CRED.
In a report issued December 1999, Munich Re, the world's largest insurer of insurance companies, noted that the number of natural disasters has increased more than fourfold since the 1950s. Disasters quadrupled over the last 20 years, Oxfam. From 120 disasters a year on average in the early 1980s to 2007, which alone had 500, the highest number since Munich Re records began in 1974. 2000-2009 decade had 385 disasters a year, on average, an increase of 233% versus 1980, 1989, and 67% versus 1990, 1999, according to CRED data. Weather-related events, such as droughts, storms, and floods, have made up the majority of disasters overall, increasing by as much as 350% since data was first collected in 1950. Increase of deluges by 57% and droughts by 47% comprises for most of these numbers. Since the 1980s, earthquakes, which are not weather-related, have risen by around 50%. Munich Re, in a study with the UNEP. The group acknowledges that we should not be misled by the absence of mega-disasters, and warns that much more such extremes are to be expected in the future.
A rise in the world's ocean temperatures is putting more water vapor into the atmosphere. This provides additional fuel for storms, as they are formed and travel over land. Since the 1970s, the average number of intense Category 4 and 5 hurricanes that draw their force from the ocean, occurring globally, has nearly doubled, averaging about 18 per year. In 2005, the hurricane and typhoon season not only broke records, it doubled in ferocity and count. A warmer world has generally more extreme flood-drought cycle, suddenly switching around.
Increased evaporation from the oceans brings enormous amounts of precipitation, which causes more frequent and more devastating floods.
There began to be more heat, overall, with more frequent and more intense heat waves, followed by wildfires, a result of heat, drought and increased speed of wind. Therefore, water will also evaporate more rapidly from the soil, causing it to dry out faster between rains. Droughts are becoming longer and more intense. World is in the grips of continuing worldwide drought, in place since 1980s. The number of people being fed by the UNWFP, World Food Programme, due to drought, has more than quadrupled. From just 3 million in 1996, to 16 million, in 2000. More than 1 billion people, in over 30 countries, currently suffer the effects of drought, and lack of drinking water. We've seen an incredible increase in drought-induced hardship over the last decade, says Francesco Stripoli, WFP Senior Humanitarian Advisor. Unusually warm winters, where plants are starting to bud, thinking it's spring, have been interrupted by frosts, coming late, almost into summer, and killing the buds. Summers have been too wet, with more rain, in heavier deluges. So the crops drown. Then, followed by dry spells, that bake whatever manages to grow. Temperature swings, during the seasons, are so wide, worldwide, and erratic, that sowing and reaping crops, is something that farmers have come to view as a gamble. Plants struggle along, with these mixed signals, failing to produce the yield the farmers had anticipated. The public sees nothing more unusual about such trends, than the periods of excess and scarcity in human societies. Just cycles, just trends, just something the media has grabbed to report upon. Zeta Talk predicted increasing crop failures, worldwide, for several years going into the pole shift. This means, these years will find such devastation to commercial crops, that the stores, set aside by the governments for such times, will be depleted greatly. The weather effect on crops, clicked in, during the year predicted, 2000, and were reported in the media, then hushed. Africa is starving now, and was the first, and the hardest hit continent, when the serious crop shortages began. Number of starving in the world, has reached 1.5 billion, in 2009. UN. 35,000, die each day, from the lack of nutrition. World is seeing catastrophic fall in global food production, after a succession of poor harvests, caused by severe weather conditions, worldwide. Where in the past, world balanced these situations, shipping the produce where needed. Now, in the years close to the time of passage, all parts of the world are affected. At first, stores put up against such times will be tapped. After a bit, these stores will run down, and governments will get nervous. Zeta Talk. Climate change is causing an unprecedented series of famines. The crises are becoming so frequent, that this is pushing the world beyond its ability to cope. The United Nations WFP warns, 2002. In an unforeseen and unprecedented shift, the world food supply is falling below critical levels. The UN is sounding the alarm, as the world's food reserves fall to a record 50 years low, 2008. The United Nations WFP, FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, has to cut food aid to millions of starving, because it is running out of resources. The helping hand, that is often extended from countries better off, to those in desperation, is withdrawn. Hundreds of millions of the world's people are facing starvation. As food prices spiral ever upward, driven by shortages of supply. According to the UN Food Organization and World Bank, in 2007, world wheat prices have increased by 200% since 2000. The cost of other staples have also hit record highs. Over the years 2005-2008, global food prices have risen by 83%. Suddenly, in April 2008, a specter of food shortages cast a shadow across the globe, causing food riots in many developing countries. Consumer protests in Europe. In panic, in food importing countries. 37 countries faced a food crisis, and 20 nations imposed some form of food price controls. And for the first time in history, the impact is spreading from the developing to the developed world. Crop shortages are beginning to affect the grocery shelves. Food rationing, Sam's Club, Costco, limit rice purchases. Two bulk U.S. retailers, rationing sales of imported rice, has been enough for some Americans to begin stocking up. It has also rekindled America's survivalist movement. The U.S. Department of Agriculture reported a record number of 40.8 million Americans applying for food stamps as of May 2010. Those who operate soup kitchens that feed the needy say that they are struggling to keep up with the rising demand for meals, as the amount of donated food declines and food costs rise. Starvation, already occurring in many countries, will continue to tighten its grip on the world populations, but the starving will have less of a voice, increasingly ignored. Of course, leading up to the cataclysms, not all produce will fail. Greenhouse crops will come through. Carefully tended backyard gardens will survive. But the large commercial crops that supply crowded population centers will find little to market, and the prices will go up accordingly. Shortages will occur, and thus, everyone should anticipate to grow their own home, indoor gardening, chicken, fish tanks, whatever means you can achieve, and plan for the long haul. Learn how to feed yourself. Weather extremes are damaging crop yields, causing world food prices to soar, and thus, inflation. Increasing natural disasters directly drain economies out of resources. Direct damage, recovery efforts, inability to pay insurance for large numbers of affected people and companies simultaneously. These two factors combined are putting world economies in distress, and there is no sign that this is going away anytime soon. During the Great Depression, the world was not beset with natural disaster after natural disaster, as it is today. At their base, the economies were solid, and recovery followed. Today, all countries are in a crisis, affecting their base economies. As natural disasters become widespread, global financial system is becoming unable to cover the formed shortage of funds, resulting in global economic crisis. This crisis will be deeper and more widespread than ordinary crises, as large-scale natural disasters cause financial problems for many countries simultaneously. Insurance companies worldwide are close to being unable to compensate for increasing natural disasters, and will begin to falter, if not bolstered by government intervention. The economy, worldwide, has reached the point where it can no longer be disguised by any collapsing corporations, bankruptcies, closures, layoffs, jobs lost, homes lost. There is an endgame in play. On the money markets, paper money system is built on confidence that a note can be exchanged for something solid. The creditor is given credit on the assumption that he will repay. The funds he has loaned are assumed to have worth, and all past paper promises around. As can be seen when whole countries default on the paper money, Argentina being a case in point, money can become worthless almost overnight. When those at the top of the financial pile, or those whom they command, see the structures starting to become a pile of bankruptcies, likely to tie up their ability to reach down and grab a thing, so they will be left with worthless paper promises. All want to move first, in order to get a thing before the other. Confidence is the name of the game, and confidence is maintained only by talk from analysts. Today, they are maintaining confidence in the working man. They wish the populace to be unconcerned, to feel that good times are with them, not to listen to what some are saying, that emergency stores are empty and crops are failing, but to be docile and spending. They will deny desperate state of the economy, as long as it is possible. Up until the system is in a steady slip toward a crash, the facade will be maintained. Food prices will continue to rise, and there will be shortages in the stores. This will result in panic in the public, when food is simply not on the shelves, or available at any price, unless governments step in with price controls. There will be some bank failures, with those long reliant on loans and credit cards, leaving their banks without customers. This, of course, will cause panic in the banking industry. Banks will limit withdrawals, with creditors still demanding payment. Paper money will lose value, the barter system will spring up. But banks and stock markets will pretend that all is well.